And arguably, these people are happy working within the psychopathic control grid. Just talking today, many people experience enormous frustrations within their families, having people who are in this group of people represented on that slide. And we're talking here potentially 78% of the British population sharing these personality characteristics. And I'd like to suggest that if we're going to get change, it's only really going to come from this group, the 22% of NFs. So that's why I say, having done this research, I think that, dare I say it, the situation would be a little different from the way that Matthias Desmet presents it, with this large chunk of people in the middle between the awake and the unawake, this large chunk who could go either way. I'm not convinced that this group is capable of going either way. I mean, please disagree when we have questions. Nothing would give me more pleasure. But this is how I see it, based on this, this study. So it seems to me that we're talking solutions now. We must always be focused on solutions. That what we are engaged in is nothing short of a battle between, if you like, psychopaths and the unawake, who will probably share TJ characteristics, thinking, judgment characteristics. A battle between them on the one hand and the awake on the other, who share the NF, or at the very least, just the N characteristic, the intuitive feeling type. What weapons do we have at our disposal? We can talk about that in a bit. I just set out two slides and then we're finished, we're done today. Solutions within organisations and then solutions outside of organisations. And the reason I've got a page devoted to organisations is because of what we said earlier about the high incidence of psychopathy in the senior ranks of management. And you can see a quote there from a 2006 study that actually found that psychopaths receive poor evaluations from superiors. Interesting, that people actually notice that they are poor team players with poor management styles. So given that, I'd like to propose 3 solutions for filtering these people out of organisations, and certainly out from the top of organisations, because you remember what we said earlier, that the person at the top sets the culture for that organisation. And there are 3 relatively simple solutions. The first is to institute 360-degree feedback. That's a widely recognised tool within the world of human resources, which is my background. For what it's worth, I'm a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development. And so I only mention that because, you know, I want to get this point across. This is a very widely recognised method of providing feedback. And all that happens is that you ask people on the same level as a particular person above them and below them to produce feedback on that person. And I think very quickly that would expose the psychopaths. We need to push to have 360-degree feedback throughout public sector and private sector organisations. Particularly, you might say we don't have a voice in private sector organisations, but we are members of the public, so we should have a voice in pressing for this in the public sector, in government ranks, in the civil service and so on, not to mention all the other public sector organisations, the NHS and so on. Secondly, is making sure you have robust recruitment and selection processes that will ensure that psychopaths are filtered out. It's not beyond the wit of man by any means. And that should apply also to promotion. And last but not least, it would make an awful lot of sense to implement something called inclusive leadership, which is something I researched for about 4 years. Big study in industry involving companies in the public and private sectors, including the NHS on the public side, and on the private side, big organizations like Ernst & Young, Sodexo, Santander, Nationwide Building Society, and many more. And what we found from that survey, and we defined inclusive leadership as including 15 attributes, one of which was, you can probably guess what I'm going to say, empathy. Another of which is giving confidence to people. Another is active listening. In other words, listening to what people say and responding. Being a steward for the organization. In other words, making sure that its fundamental aims and objectives are implemented. That if you really put this in place, inclusive leadership, and you role model it from the top, this is the opposite of having a psychopath at the top, then the world will be transformed overnight. And I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that. I've written a book on that in 2019 with the title Inclusive Leadership. And if you're interested in that, then you can find out more about some of the wonderful organizations that are actually having this in place, are actually doing it. We're not talking about something theoretical. Royal Mail Sales, for example, the sales part of Royal Mail, which is the largest sales outfit in the UK, for example, they had a director of sales who used to be Mr. Autocrat. And then one day he thought to himself, no, actually, I'd get better results if I treated my employees well. And he taught himself to become an inclusive leader. And with that, the productivity of the organization went skyrocketing, and so did mental well-being and motivation.